Good morning, everyone. My name is Owen, and today I'm going to be looking at one of the central questions of interwar Chinese history. How effectively did Chiang Kai-shek deal with the communist threat between 1927 and 1936? Chiang's anti-communist campaign was the defining mission of his early rule, a decade-long involving mass purges, five major military campaigns, and enormous expenditures of lives and resources. My argument is that Chiang achieved striking short-term success, but ultimately created the very conditions that allowed the Chinese Communist Party to survive, adapt, and grow stronger. My apologies, because I'm not feeling good. I'm going to have to record the rest of this in with no camera, just to let you know. Alright, so the first united front was always a marriage of convenience. Sun Yat-sen formed the alliance with the CCP in 1923 largely because the Soviet Union offered military advisors funding and organization expertise that no Western providers would provide. When Sun died in 1925 and Chiang control of the KMT, the underlying tension became critical. Chiang was a nationalist and a military strongman, not a socialist during the Northern Expedition. CCP organizers were missing mobilizing workers and presenting in ways that threatened the landlord merchants and foreign business interests, whose supporters Chiang needed. By early 1927, Chiang had declared that communists were a greater threat to his authority than the warlords that he was fighting. That calculation led directly to one of the most violent political pages in modern history. Shanghai Massacre. On April 12, 1927, Chiang struck. He mobilized Du Yongxing's Green Gang, Shanghai's most powerful criminal organization, alongside soldiers of the National Revolutionary Army to attack communist-aligned unions and worker organizations across the city. Worker militias were disarmed, union headquarters were stormed, and thousands of suspected communists were arrested, executed, or simply disappeared. The purge spread rapidly to Guangzhou and Changsha, where thousands more were killed. Estimated places, the death toll was between 5,000 and 10,000 in Shanghai alone. This was a decisive short-term success as the CCP was shattered in urban China. The First United Front was destroyed, and Chiang established his Nanjing government as the sole legitimate authority. But destroying the CCP in cities did not destroy the CCP. It morally changed where and how the party operated. The White Terror was ruthless and effective at eliminating communist influence in Chinese cities. Even the left-leaning Wuhan government expelled the CCP in July 1927, leaving the party with no urban foothold. CCP membership collapsed, but here's the critical irony. The purge had a profounding unintended consequence. So the survivors who escaped the cities, Mao Zedong foremost among them, retreated into mountains, countrysides, and began building something entirely new, a peasant-based revolutionary movement. Hundred, Mao recognized that China hundreds of miles of land-hungry peasants were far larger revolutionary forces than the urban proletates. Chiang Purge has eliminated the CCP's weakest strategy and inadvertently catalyzed the strongest one. By 1930, the communists had established a significant rule base in Jiangxi, and Chiang resolved to crush it by force. The enrichment campaign begins 1930 to 1932. From 1930, Chiang launched a series of military campaigns aimed at enriching and destroying the Jiangxi Soviet, the CCP's main base in Southeastern Asia. The first three campaigns all failed, despite enormous advantages in manpower and equipment. The reason was Mao Zedong's brilliant guerrilla strategy. Rather than meeting in the nationalistic conventional bases, Mao lured the enemy deep into unfamiliar rugged terrain, structuring their supply line and then concentrated the Red Army to destroy isolated units. The local peasant population provided intelligence, food, and shelter that the nationalists could not match. Chiang committed massive resources, escalating from 100,000 to over 300,000 troops, but could not defeat an enemy that refused to fight on his terms. After three humiliating failures, Chiang changed his approach, and the CCP made a fatal error of its own. The fourth and fifth campaign. The fourth campaign had failed once more, but the fifth campaign marked a decisive turning point. Chiang mobilized between 700,000 and 1 million troops. Korea adopted a new strategy. With blockholes in a slowly tightening ring around the Jiangxi Soviet territory, the blockhouse strategy was designed to strangle the Soviet economically and militarily. Without giving the Red Army the moment places it excelled at, crucially, the CCP's own leadership helped Chiang succeeded Bo Gu and the common advisor Otto Brown and Senlai Mao and replaces guerrilla tactics with conventional positional warfare. This played directly into the nationalists' overwhelming advantage in firepower and numbers. By late 1934, the Jiangxi Soviet was collapsing. Facing annihilation, the CCP made a desperate decision to abandon Jiangxi entirely and march for survival. March begins. In October 1934, roughly 86,000 troops of the First Red Army smashed through the Nationalist blockade lines and became what was known as the Long March, a guerrilla retreat westward across some of China's most punishing terrain. The early stages were catastrophic for the communists. At the Battle of the Xiang River alone, they lost approximately half their remaining strength. This was Xiang's greatest near success. The CCP was on the verge of total destruction. Demoralized Herbert hanging troops to casualties and desertion, and led by discredited commands, had the nationalists been able to coordinate a decisive blow in those first weeks, the communists transformed from a retreat into a legend. The Shi Incident, December 1936. The dramatic climax of Chiang's anti-communist descent came into December 1930. Chiang traveled to Jian to press his commanders for yet another campaign against the communists at Yunnan. But his own general, Zhang Guling, the former warlord of Manchuria, and Yang Huqi, the local garrison commander, were furious that Chiang continued to provide fighting Chinese communists while Japan occupied Manchuria and threatened northern China. On December 12th, they kidnapped him. They demanded an end of the Civil War, the formation of a united front against China. The CCP was represented by Zhu Enlali, joined the negotiations. After 2 weeks of intense discussion, Chiang was released on December 25th after giving his oral agreement to cooperate. This was the ultimate failure of Chiang's anti-communist strategy. He was compelled to abandon it entirely and an ally with the very movement he had spent a decade trying to destroy. So where does this leave us in the overall assessment? Let's weigh the evidence. So each campaign weakened the CCP without destroying it. Each failure strengthened the movement he sought to eliminate. By 1936, Chong had lost the initiative but not entirely. Central irony, Chong's greatest success created the conditions for his ultimate failure. Alright, I'm gonna thank you all for listening today. I apologize for being sick and having to turn off my webcam and maybe a matter of voice. I appreciate that you guys took the time to listen to me, and I want to thank all of you. Have a blessed one.